Yeah, like everyone waiting for the Warblers to bust into their signature 3-part harmony, and it doesn't happen once in that whole song. And it's the last song on the record.
Hey everybody, welcome in. This is Keith Billick bringing you another episode of the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast. In case you can't tell from the sounds of it, I am coming to you from my glamorous suburban Detroit backyard recording studio. So I'm happy to have you here with me to enjoy this Independence Day. And you know what? The best way to revolt against the tyranny of other podcasts is to display your Picky Fingers pride by heading over to Banjo Podcast to get the world famous Picky Fingers t-shirts. And you know what? A bunch of those are on sale. I have marked down the price significantly on all the discontinued colors and also all small and extra small sizes. So check those out. Once again, that's banjopodcast.com. And you know what else we have to celebrate today? It is our VIP listener of the show, Paul Larson. Paul, thank you so much for your generosity. Paul is a VIP subscriber over at patreon.com/banjopodcast. That is the main way that I raise money to keep this show going. So every little bit really helps. So Paul and all you other VIPs, I appreciate your generosity. And once again, head over to patreon.com/banjopodcast to pitch in a few bucks yourself. I really appreciate it. You can also email the show, pickyfingersbanjopodcast@gmail.com, or do all the usual following and liking and subscribing on all your social media and podcast platforms. I love keeping in touch with you all those ways, and it does really help.
All the letters from my heart, they were posted all in vain, for her father found them before they reached her sight, and he stole them all away. Now I never will see her again, Lord, Lord. No, I never will see her again.
Today's featured guest is Rachael Davis. Rachael is one of these people who has been around music and singing for just about longer than she could even speak. So at this point in her life, the music just seems to flow out of her, whether she is performing her own original singer-songwriter music, gospel, jazz, folk, and yes, a bit of clawhammer-infused old-time music in there, or with her supergroup, the Sweet Water Warblers, which combines Rachael's talents with that of Erlewine and Lindsay. And you know, normally I would be really mad at a band like that for hogging all the amazing lead singers into one group, but they're just so good and are so generous with sharing their gifts that it's impossible not to like them. And Rachael in particular is a true treasure of the Michigan music scene. I will claim her, even though she has now traveled far and wide and lived in various places, makes her home now in Nashville, Tennessee. So please put your hands together and give a very warm Picky Fingers welcome to my friend and 100% certified goofball, Rachael Davis.
Okay. Oh my God. Okay. My name is Rachael Davis, and I'm from a tiny town in northern Michigan called Cadillac, the Cadillac of towns. It's, if you know Traverse City, it's up near there.
If you look at your left hand, it's like approximately where the middle knuckle is on your left ring finger.
Yes, that's exactly where it is.
Okay.
Yep. If you're lucky enough to have a left ring finger, because some people don't.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't be ableist about it. So apologies.
That's where Cadillac is. And I became a banjo player very honestly because my parents are musicians. Before I was born, my mom, she plays lap dulcimer.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad plays guitar and banjo and mandolin and sings beautiful harmonies. My mom is a songwriter. They were a musical duo. They played music together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I was born, I was kind of born into their musical community. Like they were both, well, like my mom lived outside of Lansing. My dad was a Spartan. And that Lansing music community in the late 70s, early 80s, like Sally Rogers was there, Lost World String Band. That was their music community. And
Spartan meaning attended Michigan State University.
Yes.
He didn't like fight the Trojans.
No. No, not actual Spartans. The Spartans from Lansing, Michigan.
Yeah. And did they already have Lake Effect?
No. Okay, so Lake Effect was the family band that happened.
I'm ruining things. You keep going.
And when I was a baby, they would take me to music festivals where all of those people were playing. The story that I was told, I cannot verify this because, I mean, I was there, but I don't remember this happening and there's no video or pictures or anything. Yeah. That I had this little silver ankle bracelet thing of bells. It was like silver jingly bells that my dad had from Thailand or something. And they would put it on my ankle and put me in the car seat in the middle of the jam circle before I could sit up by myself. And I would shake my foot to the rhythm of the music jam.
Like properly.
Actually, yeah.
You were grooving.
I was totally grooving.
That's awesome.
As an infant.
That's cool.
That's like the beginning. And then the story that I tell, that I remember this actually, the very first time I ever performed was at Blissfest. And I was almost 3 years old. And my parents were performing on the main stage. And when I was little, they would just bring me on, like, put me in the like back corner of the stage with like puzzles or coloring books or something, and I would occupy myself. And I was hanging out by myself, and my parents were playing a song, and I knew the words. And there were a couple of like extra microphones for the other bands, like right where I was sitting. And I just stood up and started to sing in one of them, and the sound guy turned it on. And and I sang from the back corner of the stage, that song. And then when that song was over, he came and brought it and put it right next to my mom. And I remember she was sitting down playing the dulcimer, and like the middle of my body was like where her elbow was as I was standing up. So I was like 3 feet tall. And I knew all the words to all the songs, and I performed the whole rest of the set with them.
Because you had just heard them play them around the house so much.
Yeah, because I knew the songs. I'd heard them so many times.
Oh, that's so cool.
And I remember, like, I was wearing this shiny lavender leotard and nothing. It was 1983.
You remember what you were wearing?
Yes, I do, because there's pictures of it.
Okay.
But I do remember wearing that leotard, and it was filthy because it was a music festival and I was 3.
If it wasn't filthy, that means you weren't having enough fun.
Yeah. I wasn't even experiencing the festival if my leotard was clean.
Right.
But there was a lady in front, I remember, with a big yellow skirt and a huge brimmed hat. She was taking pictures. And I remember the sensation of like getting attention and people clapping, you know, and like feeling like this, whoa, what's that?
Yeah, like the energy swell. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Incredible.
like being hooked, like kind of from that moment on performing.
Would that have been a pretty equivalent time period? You have a track on one of your albums that's a childhood recording of you.
Yes.
Is that like approximately the same
It
time
was
period?
about, yes, that was maybe, I was like almost 5. So it was like a couple of years after that. That was when I started singing harmony. Like my dad taught me how to find harmony parts. And that recording is from that time.
Well, I hate to be off brand, but like, I kind of want to ask you about that.
Go for it.
How is one taught to sing harmony as a child?
Well, started out, my parents taught me a lot of round singing.
Yeah.
It's because you have to.
Okay, we're going to come back to this.
Okay, yeah. That's how. Because it teaches you how to listen to what you're doing and focus on what you're doing while other stuff's going on.
Uh-huh.
And that was kind of the movement into that, and learning how to hold on to your own part.
Yeah.
But then finding the notes, I'm not sure if I'll be able to explain it. I just remember hearing my dad having him show me the parts and how like you can hear like this is where the third is and this is where the fifth is and this is the tonic chord and you can hear.
Was he using those music theoretical terms like that? Or
yes.
Oh, wow. That's impressive.
Yeah. It was like, so, and I remember not understanding what that meant, what it was, you know, until later, you know, like there are 3 notes in a chord and there's the first and the second and the third note. And they're this, you know, I didn't learn theory until later on, but when he was saying that, you know, I remember just kind of assigning that terminology to that activity and not really knowing what it meant. Like, oh, that note is another note in the, you know, it goes with this note because it's a third, but I didn't know what that meant musically.
Yeah, totally. And something I wonder about folks like you who have had music so ingrained in yourself, like that you can't even like remember your life before it. Someone like me, I do come at it from a more methodical standpoint. Like I knew music theory probably before I knew how to hear what a third harmony sounded like. I knew that the third is there somewhere and I need to go find it. So it's kind of backwards.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm always really curious to know, like even today, if you were learning a song, when you hear the harmony part that you want to sing, do you know that that's the third?
Yeah, I do now. Yeah, these days I do. I can go, because I've spent time, you know, since living in Nashville. I live in Nashville now, going to the studio to sing. Like I've written like backup vocal parts and stuff for people making records. So I know now, like I have the language now, but how I describe it is it's like learning what it sounds like, learning to do it. It's like learning to speak before learning to read. Like we all learn to speak before we learn to read. And I learned the visceral action of music before I learned what it was, how it all went together. So when I learned theory, it was like, I know what I already know what that sounds like.
It's descriptive. And for me, it was more prescriptive.
Yes.
Like, I don't know what the harmony sounds like, but I know I'm supposed to find a third here somewhere.
Yep. And you know, like how the structure of each chord goes together. Right. You know, like what it looks like a 6 or like a 7th or a minor, like you know what it looks like visually, but hearing it, being able to hear it, seeing it is abstract until you can really. It's like it's not visualizing. What is the word? It's audioizing.
Audiating.
Audiating. Yeah.
Someone taught me that on one of these podcasts, and I hadn't heard it either. But yeah, it's
audiating.
It's the analogous term to visualizing. Yeah.
Audiate. I'm glad I know that word now. That's what it is. So it's like seeing it and then audiating, being able to audiate what you're seeing visually.
Cool.
Yeah. I forgot what I was saying before.
I don't know.
We were
talking about your family and you were being I don't know. I feel like I already have so many things to ask you to follow up on about how your first experience of performing and you were able to experience just the thrill or the rush of like
performance
being a focus. Of a performance. I guess I want to keep hearing more about, I don't know if there's more to say about your family or how the banjo specifically got introduced to you.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. My dad is a kick-ass clawhammer banjo player. When I was before we lived in Cadillac, actually, we moved to Cadillac when I was 6. Oh. And before we moved to Cadillac, we lived in Chicago and Gompers Park. And all of my parents' friends from the Michigan music scene, when they came through town, they would stay at our apartment. And some from other places too. Like I remember being a toddler and having Dedanin stay with us, the Irish band Dedanin stay with us for like a week because it was Chicago. It was St. Patrick's Day in Chicago. and there were 4 of them, and they were like staying in the bunk room in our 2-bedroom apartment. And some of the people that would come through were like Joe Fallon from Crichton Hollow, like really great old-time banjo players. And I remember sitting in the living room when my dad was learning banjo from Joel Mabus and Joe Fallon, and like sitting literally between them. Like I have to this day a memory of their feet, you know, right in front of me, and I was playing with puzzles, and both of the banjos are like stereo around my head, and it was Bunce, my dad, and Joel Mabus, and Joel would stay with us a few times a year. So I have a memory of being around with my dad learning stuff. And then it wasn't until I was I just sang with the family band forever. And then I took piano lessons when I was 9. That's when I kind of started learning a little bit of theory. And then when I was 13, I got a guitar. I wanted to learn guitar. I wanted to learn how to play a stringed instrument. And I had this it was like this plywood guitar with a really fat neck, and it was really hard to play. It had nylon strings on it, and whoever said nylon strings are easier is full of crap. It was not easy. And the worst part is that I knew what it was supposed to sound like because I'd been around it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't make it sound like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. My dad saw me struggling with the guitar, and he saw that it was hard for me to make chords and to play the part that my left hand needed to do. He said, I wonder if you're a banjo player. He's like, let's try that. And he put this instrument that I have in this room right now was the instrument he learned on. It's a Bart Ryder banjo, number 89.
89?
Yeah, so he got it at Elderly Instruments in like the late 70s.
Yeah.
But he put this instrument in my lap and like showed me how to hold it. And he taught me, I'm sure what he was thinking was the left hand, like the neck is thinner, the strings are lighter. That part is going to be easier, without really kind of thinking through like the mind-numbing process that it is to learn the claw and clawhammer. But he was such a brilliant teacher. Like, he totally broke it down.
Was that his profession?
Yeah.
Was he a teacher?
Yeah,
okay.
He was a teacher.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
Both my parents were teachers and musicians.
Yeah.
And my dad was the guy, he gave guitar and banjo lessons to kids in our town. You know, so he was like the guy that gave music lessons. But he broke it down little bit by little. And I had an edge, I think, because if you play a stringed instrument that you strum, like the strumming motion is nowhere present in that process. And if you're used to strumming, like I give banjo lessons too. And if somebody who already plays an instrument that strum, it's really hard to get them to keep their wrist rigid. And I didn't have that. You have to unlearn the strum basically if you want to. You have to blank it out in your mind in order to start. So
you hadn't even gotten that far in guitar.
Yeah, exactly. I did not have to unlearn the strum. Like the physicality of the claw, like the stiff wrist and the scrunched up hand. Like he just said, hold your hand like you're holding onto a jumper cable, you know? And I was like, okay, what's a jumper cable?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a little kid. And then I don't remember, he just held up his hand. And then he was like, to get that bum ditty, that clawhammer bum ditty, the dung, dugga, dung, dugga, dung, is really a 1-2 rhythm. And so you got to learn the 1-2 first, and it's just the downstroke and then the thumb on the 5th string.
I kind of want to hear this demonstrated.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea.
And also, are you supposed to grab the red jumper cable or the black one?
That was my first question. I actually, this past December, Sav Beist from the Accidentals, they live in Nashville now too.
Yeah. And
she wanted a clawhammer banjo lesson. And so she came over and we were hanging out, and I was giving her the Bunce method banjo lesson. And I realized that in teaching clawhammer, a good way to help someone who has the strum arm is to grab a small item with your pinky and your ring finger on your right hand.
Oh.
And to hold it while you're learning the strum. And just because that's basically what you're trying to get to anyways.
Right.
And it keeps your wrist rigid and your arm too, because you're concentrating on holding it. So it's like a shortcut to unlearn the strum.
Yeah.
And so she was grabbing onto I folded up a piece of paper or something, and I'm like, hold this with these fingers.
And if you drop it, you screwed up.
Yeah, and so you're concentrating on holding, because there are a lot of things to concentrate on when you're playing clawhammer, when you're first learning it. And so you're concentrating on holding that. You're concentrating on move, you have to keep your wrist rigid, and it's an up and down. It's like a down up is the okay. I digress. Okay, so Bunsey told me that it's a 1-2 rhythm. So the classic.
And Bunce is your father.
Bunsey is my dad. Yeah. When we were little, he said there's too many guys named Dad, so call me Bunce.
That's a good point.
So we called him Bunce. David Bunce is my dad. He's a badass. So the sound, when you think of clawhammer banjo, you think of the that's what it is. That's when you think, that's old-time banjo. But Bunsey consolidated it. It is a 1-2 rhythm. So the first thing you're learning is the 1 is the down stroke, where you're using, you can't see it on the podcast, but I have a backwards guitar pick that is in the spot of a fingernail. If you don't bite your fingernails like I do, you don't need one of these.
And it's a backward finger pick.
It's a backwards guitar or finger pick. It's a backwards finger pick. Yeah. Any kind of finger pick. You can use these for banjo too.
We call them banjo picks around. Yeah.
It's a backwards banjo pick. And the 1 you're pressing down with the backwards banjo pick. And you're getting the sound from the pressing down. 1. And the 2 is the 5th string or your thumb, whatever you're grabbing with your thumb. So it's the 1-2 rhythm that you're starting with. And you start, he said, do this on every string until you can go like this on every string. And I was like, sweet, no problem. Give me that thing. Let me try.
Yeah.
and he gave it to me, and I was like, oh God. And it was so hard. And it's like, it was so hard. Like, there was smoke coming out of my ears. Like I was sweating just trying to go 1, 2. Because it's like you press down on the 1, and then the 2 is like you give the strings a little squeeze, and when you lift your arm up, your hand up, you grab the 5th string, and it makes the 2. And it was so hard, even without having to unlearn the strum. It was just like my brain was cooking.
Yeah.
And so I sat it was like, it had to have been springtime, but I remember sitting at home for a long time. So I wasn't in school. There must have been some kind of school break or something. And I sat in the living room and did this for hours and hours and hours every day for weeks in our living room. And all of my people that live in my house that I grew up with, all my siblings and my parents were all musicians. So there's instruments everywhere. And we had a noodle rule, which is like, if someone is noodling incessantly, just like not really playing a song. If they're on an instrument and they're just
idle hands making noise.
Yeah, and they're not really playing. It can get tedious for everyone else. So we had noodle rule, which was somebody, if you're doing that, somebody could call noodle rule on you, and you would have to play a whole song from front to back, and then you could go back. And it just kind of broke up the monotony of the annoying noodling. But the problem is that I didn't have any alternatives to this while I was in my house. You didn't
have a song.
I didn't have a song.
Yeah.
Because Bunsey said that you can't really do a song until you can go. So you really had to spend, when I give banjo lessons, the first lesson is just that. You have to be able to go without thinking about it. My mom one day was, she was in the kitchen or something, and she said, she's told me, it's a really nice day outside. Why don't you go do that in the yard? Go get the hell out of the house, please, because holy shit. And so I went outside, and there's this big crabapple tree in the backyard of my parents' house, and I was under it, and I noticed, I was trying to not think about this, and I noticed that it was blooming. I was like, oh, like the pink flowers came out, and there were birds. I was looking at the little bumblebees, and then I realized that I was doing it without thinking it. Like, it clicked.
Perfect.
In that moment, and I was so freaking excited, and it did. Like,
it's what you needed.
Yeah. And it was, I needed a change of scenery, and it totally clicked. And it was so exciting. I remember the moment. It was so exciting when it clicked. And I knew I didn't have to think about it anymore. I'd gotten it. And I went and found my dad. And I was like, hey, check it out. I can do it. And he was like, all right, sweet. And then he started teaching me songs. And then from then on, it was just like whatever song I could find. Like, teach me another one. Who else can I play with?
You mentioned remembering your first, what did you mention to me?
I remember the first song that Bunsey taught me. It was Angelina Baker.
Yeah.
That was the very first song he ever taught me.
Perfect.
Angelina Baker, Angelina, love you, Angelina.
Fine choice, Bunce.
And that, I mean, because everybody knows that one.
Yeah.
And everybody can play along to that one.
Yeah, perfect.
And then he knew, a myriad of old time tunes, and they were all singing tunes too, because like in there were no fiddle players in our family. And so all the banjo tunes all had words. They were all singing tunes. So it wasn't until later on that I kind of wanted to get into that we're playing tunes and not made for singing, that we're just playing tunes.
Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it really seems with you and your family like the songs are the main thing. And the banjo playing is great, but it's a vehicle is to serve to give you an excuse to sing a song with and stuff like that.
Because everybody can sing. In the house growing up, all my parents' friends, like they were musicians and teachers. And all of their friends were also musicians and teachers. Yeah. And so we would have a music jam once a month that was Music Sunday. And people from the top half of Northern Michigan that were in our music community would come and there was lots of jamming. And it was about like playing instruments so everybody could sing along.
Yeah, such a vibrant community. Even still, a lot of those people are still around.
Oh, yeah. There's a Music Sunday next weekend when I'm going to be up north, and there's one next weekend.
Oh, how cool.
You want to come?
I would love to.
You're invited officially.
Yes. And now a word from our sponsors, but we will be right back with the episode in just a few moments. The Picky Fingers podcast is thrilled to be sponsored by Peghead Nation, the top site for instructional video courses in banjo, guitar, mandolin, fiddle, dobro, upright bass, and ukulele. You're going to learn bluegrass, old time, and other styles from some of the most talented players and instructors in all of roots music. Go to pegheadnation.com to see their great lineup of courses. Here are some of the choices just for banjo. Beginning Banjo and Bluegrass Banjo with Bill Evans, Clawhammer Banjo with Evie Layden, Wade Ward-style Banjo with Bruce Molsky, The Banjo According to Danny Barnes, and Contemporary Bluegrass Banjo with Wes Corbett. All of these courses include high-quality multi-angle video lessons, downloadable notation and tablature, play-along tracks, and plenty of tunes and songs to play. The best part is that just for being a Picky Fingers podcast listener, you are going to get your first month free. So head over to pegheadnation.com and use the promo code PickyFingers at checkout. That's pegheadnation.com and Picky Fingers, all one word, all lowercase, at checkout. I'm so proud to welcome a new sponsor to the podcast. That's Page Capos. Page has been family-owned right here in my home state of Michigan since Brian and Ralph Page started the business way back in 1988. Since then, Page has become known for its high-quality capos for all the instruments, and folks, they have 3 different lines of capos, so whether you are just figuring out how these things work, right on up to if you are a demanding studio or stage professional, Page has a product for you. And just when you thought there couldn't possibly be anything new in the capo design world, they are proving that wrong with their new Page Pro series. I can tell you firsthand that the innovative patented design on these new Page Pro capos is second to none in both the tone quality, it sounds like you're not playing with a capo at all, and also the tuning stability. It's pretty amazing and you owe it to yourself to check them out. So head over to pagecapo.com. That's P-A-I-G-E capo.com. The Picky Fingers podcast is also sponsored by Elderly Instruments. I have been so lucky to have Elderly Instruments as my local family-owned music store for as long as I can remember. But they are more than just that. They are the world's most trusted source for new, used, and vintage fretted instruments, which means they're the first place you should check for any of your banjo, mandolin, guitar, ukulele needs, instructional materials, and all the accessories to go with it. And the other part is that Elderly is just as well known for their excellent customer service as for their amazing selection of products. So head over to elderly.com to see their full inventory or give them a call to talk to one of their helpful and professional sales representatives. That's 517-372-7880. And last but not least, we have another family-owned business in Sullivan Banjos supporting the Picky Fingers Banjo podcast. A lot of you know that I have been playing my Sullivan banjo for about 20 years now, and I'm here to tell you that it is sounding better than ever. Now, fortunately for you, Eric is still maintaining that high Sullivan quality, and he is ready, willing, and able to build you the banjo of your dreams, whether you just want a tried and true traditional design on up through your wildest custom dream banjo. Eric is here to build it for you. Head on over to sullivanbanjo.com, email sullivanbanjo@gmail.com, or just go the old-fashioned way. Call up Eric Sullivan at 502-365-5022. Get that legendary Sullivan tone with that added personal touch of being able to design your banjo with the person who's actually building it for you. So with you now, of course, you're a multi-instrumentalist. Why is the banjo your favorite?
I think probably because of how it makes my brain buzz when I'm playing it. Like, it's just like the most meditative thing. Like, my favorite banjo joke is, how can you tell when the stage is level? The banjo player's drooling out of both sides of their mouth. Yeah. And that's supposed to be a commentary on the intelligence level of the banjo player. But in my personal experience, it's because you're not thinking about anything else. Like, you go so far into your musical brain that everything else shuts down. Yeah. That's probably why I like it the most. Like,
if you haven't actually drooled on your instrument,
then you're doing it wrong.
Followed very quickly by looking around to see if
anybody noticed. And if any other banjo player did, they're like nodding, smiling. Like, I get it.
That's a great explanation. I love that.
It's because, like, you really can't, like, anything that worries you. I also knit, like, I'm a knitter. And knitting does the same thing, you know. It's just like a repetition thing. There's something you're using your hands, but also with the musical aspect of it too. So, like, all these centers of your brain are lighting up, and I can't be stressed when I'm playing banjo.
Yeah, I'm not a meditator, but my own justification for not being a meditator is like,
because you're a banjo player.
That's my thing.
Yeah.
If Danielle notices that I'm just having like a grouchy day, she's like, have you like not practiced in a day or two or something? I'm like, no.
It's
Why
totally
can you tell?
true.
Like, yeah, maybe.
You seem stressed. Go jam.
Exactly. You know, we haven't even talked about a lot of different projects that you ended up getting involved in, but you have a really strong history and grasp of like a lot of different folk musics, jazz, gospel, all that.
Yeah.
And it makes me curious, like, are you actually musically sheltered in a way? Like, did you listen to Pearl Jam, or were you like oblivious to
I was
all
oblivious,
the normal stuff?
Well, it's funny that you say Pearl Jam specifically, because that was one that I did hear when it came out because my older cousins were playing it.
Okay.
And I had never heard anything like that.
I just picked a popular 90s band.
It exploded my mind. Like
Okay.
early childhood, it was just traditional old time stuff, you know, and it was folk revival stuff. It was my parents' friends. It was all of the stuff that was at the music festivals. There was no early pop music in my awareness, really. Like, I heard my cousins playing Debbie Gibson and Madonna. And it was really for my cousins. Like, my mom is one of 10 kids. And so I had a bajillion cousins.
Oh, yeah.
And we had a really close relationship I did with all our cousins because we lived near each other. And all of the popular music that I had, that I found was through them. Like, it was that summer that Pearl Jam record came out, and like Neil Young Harvest Moon came out, and there was it like Nirvana Unplugged or something? There was like that summer 92, 93, I was like 13 or 14, and all of that stuff.
I know what you're talking about. There's that like where like within 6 months,
yeah,
Red Hot Chili Peppers and Soundgarden and Pearl Jam and Nirvana, like all of them, all these albums,
these like iconic rock and roll albums,
yeah.
And I remember that summer. I remember hearing Pearl Jam and thinking, why does this music make me feel like this?
And what was that? And I assume it was something that was like different from your old time music.
It was so exciting. It was like Dorothy opening the door in Oz.
In the Technicolor.
Yes, in Technicolor. And like, there's so much more out there. And then it was shortly thereafter that we had a record player, right? We had a cassette player in our house. My parents taught us how to drop the needle when we were toddlers. And I was the first person in our house to own a CD player. And I just had like a little boombox I got for my 15th birthday. I brought it home for my birthday party, and Bunsey was like, okay, I got to go get you some music for your CD player. And he went to the FYE. Do you remember FYE CD stores? For Your Entertainment? They were like a small chain of CD stores.
No, we had Camelot and Tape World.
Ooh, yeah, Tape World.
And there was actually a really cool local music store in Midland called The Turntable, or Turntable Records or something like that.
Oh, is it still there?
No.
FYE was a chain. It was like in malls. There was one in Cadillac, and Bunsey he saw me with the CD player. I was so excited to have a new format of music to hoard. So he like ran out and got me some CDs, and I don't know what possessed him to do this. He got me Ella Fitzgerald's songbook, Louis Armstrong's Greatest Hits, and Sarah Vaughan. He just got me some like jazz CDs.
And good ones.
Really good ones.
And that wasn't a part of what they were listening to?
No. Like,
that really shocks me because it's such like
it's part of it. Like, I remember listening to like Donovan and the Beatles. I remember listening to the Beatles. I remember listening to the Weavers, all of our friends, all of my parents' friends. Bill Staines, Joel Mabus, Claudia Schmidt, and Sally Rogers. And also my dad had this sweet collection of Bollywood records. I remember those.
Really?
Those were fun to dance to as a little kid. And then there was a little bit of blues too, but not a lot. Not a lot of blues or gospel. It was mostly old-time traditional American folk music.
You tell a hilarious story on stage about it's such like a great imagery of Bunce driving you to school, and I don't know if it was like a VW van or just a conversion van.
It was a Ford Econoline van.
With chickens in it and blasting Afrobeat, and he's like wearing a dashiki. Maybe I'm adding that part.
He usually wore kurta. Okay, so Bunce, my dad, he grew up in India. He was born and raised in Southeast Asia. So culturally, he's Southeast Asian, and you got all of that right. That
like I said, is such vivid imagery.
We had chickens in the city. We in Cadillac, Michigan, and they were fenced our yard. They lived in the fence, lived
Having
in the
chickens
yard.
isn't the weird part, Rachel.
That's not the weird
Putting
part.
them in the
It's because the yard was fenced off, but only on 3 sides. So the chickens would escape out of the yard, and Bunty would be chasing them around the neighborhood trying to get them back. And this one day, he like had to come go pick up my youngest brother from school in his big Ford Econoline conversion van. And he had like, it was like a deli cab is what like we made fun of, that the van was like a cab from India.
From India.
And he had these like bronze bells like hanging from those center, like in the ceiling where like the lights are. And so when you're driving around, they're jingling. And he also would drive around listening to like Johnny Clegg and Savuka, which is like South African music.
I love that stuff. Yeah.
And he had in the cup holders, he had like an assortment of different shakers, like percussion instruments. And so he would drive around blasting African music, playing the shaker with the windows rolled down in Cadillac, Michigan. You know, wearing like a Corta shirt or something. At this time, he was wearing a lot of festival graphic tees, but he had this like this like little hat that he wore that was an African hat.
Yeah.
And this one time the chickens had escaped. He was late picking my brother up from school. They were like on the sidewalk a block down. And so he's like, well, I'm just going to drive down there on the way to pick up Ezra.
Makes sense to me.
And herd them into the van and then continue on. And so that's how the chickens got in the van at school, blasting the music with the shakers. And yes, you got all of that right.
I love it. Someday when they make a movie about him, that's just going to be the best scene of the movie.
It's very vivid.
Yeah, I love it. But you were talking about he got you these jazz albums.
Yes.
Like, what did you say? Ella Billie Holiday
and Louis Armstrong and Sarah Vaughan.
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Not even Billie Holiday yet.
Okay.
And so he just gave me these records and he was like, listen to this. It'll change your life.
Yeah.
He was so enthusiastic about music. And I was like, I'm down. I'm like, let me have it. And I took him into my room, put him on my new CD player, and like could not stop listening, couldn't stop listening to it. Mm-hmm. I would go down, I would have him drive me down to FYE and I would go find all of the jazz singers I could find. You know, like that's when I found Billie Holiday, Johnny Hartman. And he was like, you know, there are other cool stuff that aren't singers. Bunty was like, you should listen to Coltrane as a singer. And so I got a bunch of Coltrane CDs and, you know, learning phrasing for jazz vocals from like Ella Fitzgerald scat and John Coltrane, you know, solos. Like that was where I learned phrasing.
I would love to hear you get like more nerdy and specific about like, are there actual things that you can point to that?
Well, so when I was listening to those records, I would try to like learn Ella Fitzgerald scat parts.
Yeah.
You know, note for note. And because it was like the ultimate climb, right? And like there was a time when I could do it. And when I would listen along, like even now when I listen to those records, I can sing along to, you know, like I know every little nuance and every little part, but nothing specifically really other than like I was just trying to do every single note. And sometimes now when I'm on a long drive, I'll like put on like Thelonious Monk, I'll put on Underground and try to vocalize some of the cool solos in there that are just, they jump all over the place, you know, to try and maintain that control. And I guess I didn't realize that I was like creating chops at that time. I just thought it was something fun to do. Then.
And you said that, well, you're 15 when you got your CD player, so it's like shortly after that, basically.
Yeah, it was 16, 17. And then we had friends, like my brother's friends were in a blues band. And like around that time was when I started jamming with musicians that were my age, like kids that were playing, finding other kids that were players and not just my parents' friends. And so... you know, singing like Luke Winslow King actually is from Cadillac and was in a blues, like started a little blues band in high school, and we would jam in our basement and stuff. And so I would sing. He loved like Jimi Hendrix, but then when Bunty heard us doing that stuff, he like he's like, you have to listen to Robert Johnson. You have to listen to Muddy Waters. Like, here's like a Chess Records box set. Like listen to these guys. You have to listen to Howlin' Wolf. And he waited till the freaking perfect time. Like his timing was amazing.
Yeah.
Like
you had this like music life coach built in.
he was like a music life coach. His timing was perfect because like he gifted that stuff to us right at the time when our brains were primed to receive it. And I was so lucky. Yeah, he was my music life coach.
Yeah, that's so cool. I already knew of you, but mostly in like a folky context. So like when you guys did the Shout Sister Shout album, that was like, it was just so cool because obviously I thought very highly of the Steppin In It crew, and they were more in my neighborhood and gave
my favorite band,
provided an ecosystem locally for me to be inspired to do my banjo things.
Yeah.
But that's a killer record too.
And it's only a canvas sky hanging over a marshland tree, but it wouldn't be make-believe if you believe in me.
Without your love, it's a honky-tonk parade.
Without your love, it's a melody played on a penny arcade.
It's a Barnum and Bailey world, just as phony as it can be. But it would be make-believe if you believe in me. Hey.
And that's great that you got to, exercise those muscles.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. I only sang along to the records I listened to. Oh, and when I was a teenager, actually, Cadillac had this concert series in the summertime that was just jazz in the park. And it was our friend Scully, and he brought these world-class musicians on the circuit, and they would play Cadillac, and they would play Baldwin, and there was another town on the circuit.
He presents like a few. Okay.
Yep. And he would bring these bands from Detroit, Lincoln Center, world-class jazz bands to these little towns. And I knew I loved that stuff. And so I would go and listen to the concert in the park, and there was always an afterglow at like a club, a little bar somewhere in town. And I would go with my parents, and Scully knew that I was from a musical family, and so he would talk them into letting me sit in with them.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And they were jamming at night?
Yeah. And I would like sit in with I was 15, and I sat in with Winston Walls and Marcus Belgrave, the late great Marcus Belgrave.
Wow.
He was such a huge influence. And that's something that he ended up doing too, is like encouraging kids. Like he would bring kids into his combo, and he would run a band of young players, and I would go and sit in with them and learn in that setting like what keys I could sing songs in.
Yeah.
And how the form works. Like I knew before I ever sat in with a band, without knowing what to call it, like what the form was, like the A section and the B section and then the A section, and how it would go around in a circle, and like usually the solo happened. You did the whole form of the song, and the solo would happen over the A section, and then the singer would come back in on the B section and sing out the rest. And I knew how the structure was before I ever really sat in with the band, but didn't realize it until I was in that, sitting in there, and I'm like, oh yeah, I come back in on the bridge. Yeah, I know where that is.
That's so great that you were able to have those experiences. It reminds me of hearing about Stevie Ray Vaughan sneaking out of his house to go play blues guitar. This was maybe a little more permissible, but still it's like experiences that you couldn't have gotten any other way.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that in a long time, that like getting to sit in with those jazz in the park bands was a huge part of my musical education.
Yeah. So yeah, Shout Sister Shout, other than the fact that I don't think it has any banjo on that, does it? Probably not.
Nope, there's no banjo on that. I just sang.
Other than that, it's a pretty cool record.
It's all standards. Louis Jordan, Nat King Cole, those guys.
Yeah. Even though I'm claiming you as a Michigan music person, you've spent substantial time in Nashville and also Boston before that. I'd love to hear you compare the types of communities and maybe even your personal experiences. Like what do you think you were able to take from your time in Boston. Why was that valuable to you?
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, just give us the overview here.
I still claim to be a Michigan, like I still claim Michigan roots like that. That's a huge part of my narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And the musical community in Michigan is just so nurturing. And it was like my parents' generation and gave me this like very solid foundation to then climb up. But the Boston experience was just as valuable, and I feel so deeply for it. We were just out there. We played there couple of days ago at Club Passim in Cambridge, and I haven't played there in more than 10 years, and it was like packed. Like everybody came out, and I wasn't sure how it was going to go, but it was Saturday night. Had been there in a while. I didn't know, and it was like, they came out. Like they showed up. Like my people showed up, and it's a good time to ask me that question because it's fresh in my mind.
Yeah.
It was such a perfect spot to be launched to from the nest. And I found the reason why I went out there was because I received one fan letter one time in my entire career. And it was from a woman named Mary Lou Lord. She's like an indie rock. If you know indie rock and roll from the early 90s, she was kind of like in the grunge scene in Washington when Nirvana and Pearl Jam was coming up. Like she was in that scene.
Yeah.
But she's from Boston, and she's kind of like the busking queen of Boston. And when my first record came out, the year before I moved to Boston, they were playing it on the folk radio station out east there.
Saying dance just one more, please won't you stay? Dance as a tune while the fiddle plays. Dance for a while, what have you got to lose? We love the dance in your heart when you wear your dancing shoes.
I was 20 years old when it came out. I went to Interlochen Arts Academy for my senior year of high school. I was in the theater department, and I thought I wanted to go to New York and like go to school and learn theater. And when I was at Interlochen, I started really writing songs and was like, well, I could do that eventually. I can do that too. I want to make a record first. And so after high school, I just started writing songs and made a record, and then took that to Boston. But they were playing it on the radio out there, and Mary Lou heard one of my songs on the radio, and flipped out and sent me a fan letter written in pencil on a notebook paper. And she was playing the Newport Folk Festival that summer, August of 2021, and it was 2001. It was my 21st birthday. And she invited us to come out to play with her. And so I went out to Newport Folk Festival and played with Mary Lou on my 21st birthday. And after that trip, she introduced me to all sorts of people. She took me busking in Harvard Square. And I just totally, completely fell in love with the scene.
Yeah.
And had this person who was like also like an older person who would take care of me, like who would support me. Yeah. Who I trusted.
A little bit of a tour guide.
Yeah. And so she was like, you should move out here. And I was like, I should move out here. And so I did. And she just took me by the hand and showed me how to busk. And I moved to Boston on September 12th, 2001.
Okay.
Was when I drove there. September 12th.
Probably some clear highway driving.
And there was nobody driving east. Everybody was going the other way.
Right.
There was no one on the highway. And 3 weeks later, there was a Red Cross benefit at Club Passim that Mary Lou was playing at, and she invited me to come sit in on her set. And it was all of the New England, the Boston area songwriters, performers, like Ellis Paul and Vance Gilbert and Chris Delmhorst and Jeffrey Foucault, Peter Mulvey, everyone who made up the bulk of the East Coast music scene.
Yeah.
And they were all there. And I sang one song in Mary Lou's set, and Matt Smith, who's the manager of the club still, was the manager then, like heard it and like immediately ran out to meet me and started talking and was like, you should come and play the campfire. It was a little festival that they did in September. And, you know, like gave me a set and then just like really supported everything I was doing. I was spent like 2 days a week at Club Passim. I did shows with all of the, like I toured with Ellis Paul and with Vance Gilbert and with Peter Mulvey. All of those guys brought me in and it was amazing. It was like this one fateful evening.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Where I met all these people who like just held me on their shoulders and showed me the ropes. And going back there.
Thanks, 9/11.
No kidding. Jeez. And all those people, like, still to this day, like, I go back there and it's like no time has passed.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. I told you I was a talker.
I knew it.
I haven't played much this either.
No, what catches me off guard is when you stop and I'm like, oh, okay, so now I need, what?
I'm such a riveting storyteller.
Oh.
I have Irish genes.
Let's talk about the Sweet Water Warblers.
Yeah.
The sun will be shining. You're gonna see. Mr. Misfortune will never find me. When I get to the mountain, gonna make that climb. There's a home waiting full of happier times. Hallelujah. I am free. Leave my worries where they need to be. No matter the weather, rain or shine, I'm gonna pack up my trouble, leave them all behind. Jubilation can go.
So as people can tell, I'm a big Rachael Davis fan, but, you know, on par with that, I'm also a fan of Lindsay Lou. Of course, Lindsay Lou is well known and well loved at Picky Fingers HQ, and also May Erlewine. And like, you are three amazing, and I'll claim all of them as Michigan also.
Oh, definitely.
You know, a couple of you have flown the coop, but whatever.
We all
know
claim
where
Michigan.
you're from.
You can tell when we talk.
And so, you know, not to use like a metaphor of like your rival baseball team, but having all three of you in a band is like having Mickey Mantle and Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth.
Murderers Row.
It's the murderers row of singers.
I'm so glad there's baseball in this hour of talking.
So, you know, I'll just leave it open-ended, but I guess I'm always curious about how three of you who can each command a stage very capably
Yes.
on your own, that might not always work when you
Right.
try to work together. But at least from my standpoint, it seems to work pretty darn well when you three do it.
It
So,
works. It definitely
yeah.
works. It was put together at the Hoxeyville Music Festival in 2014 because Kristen and Jake Robinson, who run that festival, we were all booked for that festival individually. And Kristen wrote us separately and before the festival and was like, hey, would you be into like doing like a in the round set with May and Lindsay on main stage sometime during the festival weekend, like on Sunday afternoon or something? It would be really cool. I think that people would love that. And she had contacted each of us individually, asked us, and of course we were all like, yeah, let's freaking do it.
Yeah.
And so before that set, we like got together in a cabin across the street, like the morning of, and just made a list of songs that we could like sing on together and play on together. And
Just
like,
what the hell are we doing? list. Yeah,
exactly. Because we all knew tons of each other's stuff. You know, it's like, hey, Rach, you could play banjo on that, or like, you know, Lindsay, you have let's bring the bass. You know, you can play some bass on that and guitar. And we just kind of mapped it out.
Yeah.
And planned on singing. I forget. I think the first song that we sang was "Circle of the Sun." Maybe it was an a cappella song. So, but I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like, we practiced. It was super fun. You know, we have this like extreme adoration and admiration for each other. It's just like we respect each other professionally and we love each other you know, like friends.
Yeah.
And it was just this joy bomb. And when we got to the performance space, like halfway through the first line of the first song, it was like the universe opened up. And we were kind of like we're singing this badass 3-part harmony and we're like looking at each other like, do you feel that? What is that? What is that? Oh my God. And people wigged out. We didn't know what we were going to do, you know, but like immediately after they're like, when are you going to do that again? And we started like getting people like, we're like, hey, we saw you at Axeville. Will you want to come and play our venue?
Yeah.
We're like, sure, yeah.
Hey folks, Keith here with just one more reminder that if you do enjoy what you're hearing from the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter by going over to patreon.com/banjopodcast. Just a few dollars per month really does help keep this show going, and you do get excellent prizes in return. So I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine, and we'll keep these banjo episodes coming for a long, long time in the future. One more time, that's patreon.com/banjopodcast. Have you had this experience of watching a musical performance and you're kind of like, oh, that song was really sweet. I'm going to have to track that one down afterwards or something like that. And then the next one comes like, oh, no, I like this one better. And then the third one comes like, this might be my favorite one they've played so far. And eventually you're just like, no, this is just
mounting.
Awesome. Yeah. Like this just rules and you guys rock.
All bangers.
Yeah, all bangers. So the reason I put a pin in your circle song...
Circle of the Sun, right? Oh, round singing.
Round singing.
Got you.
I knew I was not getting something quite... Circle songs is like the Bobby McFerrin thing, which is a similar concept.
Yes.
I want to talk about the song, Do You Know the Chorus?
Yes.
Which has banjo on it, by the way.
It does.
And there's, maybe I'm looking like way too far into it, but there's something like really African sounding about that song.
Comes and goes and grows again. Do you know the chorus? Inside out and outside in. Sung by those before us. It comes and goes and grows again. Do you know the chorus? Inside out and outside in. Sung by those before us. It comes and goes and grows again. Do you know the chorus? Inside out and outside in. Sung by those before us.
And so the fact that it has banjo really just does something for me.
Yeah.
So am I looking too much into that?
No, you're up like, so I've had people like, when I was in my 20s, we played some shows with David Lindley. One of my earliest songs, original songs, was written on the banjo because the banjo was the first instrument I played. I was learning to accompany myself. And I wrote a song when I was a teenager. It's called Better Than Me. And it's got this real, like, should I play it?
Is that on your, yeah.
It's on the very first record.
Well, I'd rather hear you play it right now.
So I'll play it for you. And then I'll tell you. We played it during the show with David Lindley. And then I'll tell you. It was like...
Well, you said that I remind you of your love. 'Cause when I smile, my eyes they sparkle like the stars above. And I'm not her, she's not me. And nobody knows this better than me. Along my thoughts, you've tangled in my heart, you won. But I'm afraid your love belongs to
Nobody knows this better than me. Said I'm not her, she's not me. Nobody knows this better than me. And that I wrote that when I was like 16 years old.
Yeah.
Probably.
Do you still perform that?
Rarely.
Okay.
And
Well,
there's
good job then.
There's another verse that I did not remember in there somewhere. I'm gonna have to listen to the recording.
Yeah.
But when I play, that was usually in my set, my regular set. It was one of my few banjo tunes that I had in my set, and we opened for David Lindley, and he specifically asked me about that. And he said, do you have Indian influence in music? Because he was like, it sounds like the intervals and the timing, it's like
stuff,
raga sounding. And he picked that up, and he was like, it sounds like world music. There's like some world music influence in there. And I'm like, oh, there is. You called it. That when talking about do you know the chorus too, it's the same kind of thing because there's unison singing in there, which is really fun to do when you're in a harmony group.
Yeah.
And you sing unison singing. But it's like I guess maybe like the timing of it, the meter, it's like really kind of like
there's something odd with it.
Yeah. It's almost like it could sound Celtic, but it's also kind of got this weird like Balkan thing. It's like da 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 da, and it skips a beat somewhere. It's like got a weird time signature, but
yeah,
I can see what you're saying.
I don't know if your brain works like this, but it's more of a horizontal form than a vertical form.
Definitely, okay. I know exactly. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yep. Because in the beginning, and then like it starts a cappella, and then where the music comes in, like. The singing part like skips a beat, between the two parts, really, it like jumps to the next part. And then there's like a hole, it hangs before the music comes in, but in a really odd way. I remember recording it and being like, okay, I just have to totally check out and like just get into the headspace of this tune. I can't think about it. I'm going to screw it up.
Right. Well, you needed the apple what was the tree?
The crabapple blossom. I needed the crabapple blossom
to distract you so that you could just vibe with it.
Yeah, it's like getting into the headspace of a song. It's like the best way I can think about it. It's like when you're playing with a toddler. It's like you got to get into their headspace or you're going to not know what to do.
Right. Of course, this guy wants to come to your birthday party.
It's way more fun when you do that.
I mean, I think there's even something in like the actual way that you are singing it. You meaning all three of you.
Yes.
That like just reminds me of something that I've heard.
World
African
music. Yeah, world music.
I don't know.
It is like the tone, because we use a lot of different styles, right? Like we can sing soulful songs, or we can sing lilting lullabies, or we can sing kind of like harsh toned unison singing songs. We like a lot of different, we like to use our voices many different ways.
Yeah. And like you said, the unison, that's a powerful arranging tool, especially when the next line busts out
totally is
into the harmonies and like, right.
And like the last song on the full length record, Mother's Voice, we sing the entire song in unison. There isn't a moment of harmony in that song. And if you know us and it's the last song on the record, you're just waiting for it to bust, and it never does. And that tension is the art in it. Like we made that choice on purpose.
Yeah.
I hear the voice of my mother. I would know it anyway. Coming up from in my body. Like a song that's in the air. Oh, if I could be eternal, through the ash and bone, I would hear her heartbeat, steady as my own. Oh, if I could be a full moon.
Because
No, brilliant.
like everyone waiting for the Warblers to bust into their signature 3-part harmony, and it doesn't happen once in that whole song. It's the last song on the record.
I love it. I remember hearing, being at a show where Gillian Welch and David Rawlings did that, had a unison song.
Yes.
And it really hit. Yeah, once I realized that that's what they're really doing this,
That's so powerful. And they're known for their harmonies. It's the same kind of thing. It's like that it's just so powerful.
Yeah, you're talking about like the art of singing. I love
on this banjo podcast.
You're when it comes to singing, you're driving a Ferrari. I'm sitting here on like a rusty bike with one flat tire. So I love hearing about this. It's like great and fascinating, and I loved. So talk about how do you to torture the metaphor. How do you drive your Ferrari? How do you determine when to stomp on the gas and when you maybe need to like handle the curve a little more delicately or drive through the school zone and or when do you need to pick up the chickens and take them along?
Well, it depends really. It depends on the place. It depends on the day. It depends on how I'm feeling or who I'm playing with, who I'm singing with. I mean, it's a language, right? So a lot of it is feeding off of who I'm with, who I'm singing with, who I'm performing with. But most of the time in a performance, it's just about the energy of the individuals around me. Meaning the players on stage with me and also everybody in the room too, because I'll perform totally solo. And the way I try to explain it whenever I attempt to is that people ask since I was little, people look at me and they say, "Where are you keeping that big sound in that little frame?" Right? And it is not ever in me ever. It is coming through. I'm like a filter. I feel like I'm like this is gonna get real whimsical here in a minute. Okay, I feel like I'm like this like cosmic conductor. Like I'm this conduit, and I'm filtering the energy that I'm getting from the individuals in the room. I have this whatever I can sing. I have this physical ability to use my voice. But when I was when I was trying to find my own voice when I was a teenager, and I'm listening to Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong, and also like Pearl Jam and Neil Young, and found like Patty Griffin and Dar Williams and those guys. When someone hears a singer and they feel this elation or that it makes them feel a certain way, what the response is to try and imitate the sound, because that's what you're hearing, right? They're like, everybody wants to sound like Billie Eilish, right? Or like Sarah Bareilles or whatever, because what you're hearing is making you feel a certain way. And what my mom told me really early on was what you're trying to imitate is the energy, is the feeling. And you use your own voice and then imitate the energy, and you imitate the energy of your favorite singers, not the sound. And so you're using your own voice and you're collecting and delivering that feeling, not the sound.
Yeah, I love that.
And so I never was caught in this cycle of imitating a singer, because I was trying to deliver the feeling that I got when I heard my favorite singers. And so there's this conversation between the people around, like there is an energetic conversation happening with the other bodies around.
Yeah.
And I'm collecting this energy. I'm feeling what they're feeling. We're all in this singular live music experience together. And I'm collecting it and I'm kind of translating it into a sound.
Yeah. That's
into
amazing.
Singing.
Well, I love the what you said about being the conductor, because you are feeding off the energy, but in a way you're so I don't know. What I'm thinking about right now is just I don't have so much performing experience with you, but I have a fair bit with Lindsay.
Yeah.
And I have all these memories of maybe the room is kind of sleepy, or maybe
Yeah.
we're a little sleepy
Yeah.
on stage. And she, not in words, but she essentially is saying like, all right, you guys, I guess I'm
Yeah.
going to do this all myself.
Yeah.
Here it goes.
And then you, like-
I'll be danged if she doesn't whip the
Yep.
whole room and turn the whole thing around.
I've seen her do that too.
She can just do it. And that's a really powerful skill.
Yeah, I've seen her do that too. And noticing too, because like it exists, like it's all sitting there. All of that energy is sitting there, floating around everybody
Uh-huh.
who's creating at the same time and amplifying it or whatever, highlighting it, shining a light on it. Because you're both drawing it in and putting it out at the same time. Like it's this cool circle.
Yeah, feedback
Yeah,
loop.
it's this cool
Yeah.
circle.
Absolutely.
I've seen her do that too. It's pretty freaking rad.
Well, that's why she gets all these gigs as like these festival at large
Yeah.
artists. Is
Yes.
like she's a professional ringer.
Yeah,
is what
she is. She's a freaking ringer.
Dang it.
Shout out to Lindsay Lou.
Yeah, Lindsay. Let's go talk about banjos some more.
Yeah. That's
Tell
what
me
this
about
is
your
about.
actual banjo.
Okay.
Let's do like gear talk now.
Okay, yes, my actual banjo.
Which you already kind of mentioned it.
Yeah,
but
I'll give you the rundown of
Yeah.
it. It's my dad, my banjo.
And to stay on Lindsay topic for a second, is this the one you loaned her for our album that we were doing way back when?
Yes,
I think it is.
totally is.
I feel like I remember that happening.
This is the one she played on the record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice to see you again, old pal.
It is. It's a Bart Ryder banjo. Bart makes open back banjos. It's they're like, I think what you can get in the store these days are in like the 5,000s. I think 5,000.
I don't know that you can get them in stores. I think he is retired.
He is retired. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are like a few floating around, and there's some in Elderly. I think you can find them in the Midwest, in stores in the Midwest that are floating around. But he ended up making about 5,000 in his time. I think I might be talking out of my ass. I don't know for sure, but I feel like I remember seeing serial number that was like 50 something.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Because he did it for like 45 years or
Right.
something. And this one is number 89. It's got like a fiber skin head. I've never changed it.
I can tell that. That's got some,
And I don't want to
that's got
either.
some tone build up on it.
Because like some of this, like there's this little hand rest on it that
Yeah.
Bunsey put on there before he passed it on to me because the skin was peeling off of it. But like some of this stuff is from me, but it's also some of it is from my dad learning.
Yeah.
So it's like the tracks in the snow of both of us playing this instrument. So I don't want to change the head on it. And
Right.
so far it's all right. It's pretty durable.
No, you don't wash the patina off of
No,
it,
I don't
and
want to do that.
just the physical connection too.
I
Yeah.
don't want to do that. But he put this hand rest on there, but right before he taught me how to play it. While one time Bart actually saw it, like I think it was at like a fretboard festival or something in Kalamazoo.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this instrument and he looked at it and he was like, oh yeah, I remember that one. It's a Frankenstein. And apparently, he just had like pieces in the workshop and he made this one from, it's like, what is that? Like tiger maple or
It's
something?
maple. Yeah. It's a flame maple.
Yep.
I don't know what would be mismatched, but I
He said it
obviously
was
he
a
would know.
Frankenstein. Yeah, he was like,
obviously he would know.
and it's like the pot is like it's like between 11 and 12 inches. Like it's not regular.
Well, it's
I
a
don't
good
think.
thing you don't want to change the head because
Yeah, 'cause I
that's going to
wouldn't
be a
be able
headache.
to.
Yeah.
So it's not totally uniform, I don't think. And it looks older too because it has so many brackets around the head. And like supposedly like the older the banjo is, the more brackets it has or whatever.
Yeah, a lot of those old ones, yeah.
So people look at this and they think it's really old.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, no, it's just like a little older than I am.
Just pretty old.
Yeah. It's like adorably old. Not that old. But yeah, it's nothing fancy. And
Scooped fingerboard, is that
Yep.
something that like, I know you got it from dad, but is that something that you would prefer now?
Yeah.
Like if
When I go into the store and like look to play banjos in the music store, I look for the scoop.
That's an attractive thing for
Yeah,
you.
yep.
Yeah, cool.
Mhm.
And like you said, you do wear the
Backwards
reverse finger
banjo pick. Yep.
I have noticed that you do wear the full slate of finger picks when you're guitaring.
Yes.
Have you ever been tempted to unleash those on the banjo?
All three of them? Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, I definitely have. I definitely have been tempted to, but I just have, it's not come to fruition yet. But I mean, of course,
can't help but wonder.
I've tried it,
when I see that.
definitely like in my own little space. But yeah, I have been tempted, of course.
All right. Just wondering.
But I still do not
Selfishly
exist at
wondering.
all in the bluegrass circle of banjos.
Well, you're welcome anytime should you choose to enter, but you seem to be doing okay on your own.
This instrument too was like the only banjo we had in our house growing up. We only had one, and it was my dad taught me on it. He learned on it. He taught me on it. Then after I'd played banjo for a few years, they took me to elderly instruments and got me my own.
Mm-hmm.
And I picked out a Ramsey banjo, and it was a big, like it was a 13-inch pot, and it was not as bright sounding as this one. It was warm, a lot warmer. And my dad liked that one. And so when we would sit down to play together, like this was I liked to play this one. He liked the other one. So when I moved to Boston, he was like, why don't you take that one and I'll keep the Ramsey.
You swapped.
Yeah. And I was like, are you sure? Because this is a really nice banjo. And he said, yeah. And he still plays the Ramsey all the time. And this is what I ended up taking out into the world.
All right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, geez, Rachel.
Did we miss anything?
That was my next question. So now I literally have nothing left. You stole my last one.
Did we miss anything? Well, you could say it too.
Make sure we know what are your websites? How do people come pay money to see you perform or pay money for your music or just, admire you from afar?
How am I accessible in the World Wide Web?
Yeah.
My website is rachaeldavis.com, and unfortunately, my name is spelled Rachael at the end. So it's rachaeldavis.com. There is a Rachael Davis spelled EL who plays fiddle I think she's in North or South Carolina. And so you might find her too if you're looking for me. But rachaeldavis.com, and my music is all over the place. It's on Apple Music. It's on my website. It's on Apple Music. It's on Spotify. It's at my shows. You can see where I'm playing on my website.
Yeah. Wonderful.
All of that.
Okay. I guess that's it.
All right. Thanks, Keith.
All right. Thank you, Rachel.
I'm so
Always a
excited to be here.
pleasure.
I love this podcast.
It loves you too. Thanks so much for tuning in, folks. The song clips you heard in this episode were Sweetwater Sea and then Starflower O, both by Rachael Davis, The Wren's Nest by Dedanon, The Dragonfly by Joel Mabus, Ibhola Lethu by Johnny Clegg and Savuka, It's Only a Paper Moon by Shout Sister Shout, All My Love by Marcus Belgrave, Dancing Shoes by Rachael Davis, and then 3 songs in a row by the Sweet Water Warblers. Those are Hallelujah, Do You Know the Chorus, and then Mother's Voice. Thank you once again to Paul Larson. He is this episode's VIP supporter of the show by signing up over at patreon.com/banjopodcast. That is the best way to support this show and keep the lights on here at Picky Fingers HQ. Once again, patreon.com/banjopodcast. That's going to do it for me, folks. Happy 4th of July. I'll see you next time.
Blah 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 blah. Send help. I'm in a hotel room. There's no witnesses.